All right. Recording. Admit this person. Hello. Welcome. All right, Danny, can you handle admitting people?
Yes.
And clicking through the slides?
Yes.
All the monitors?
Yes.
I have monitor jealousy in this moment. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We have a couple people here. We might have some more folks trickle in. So some of the most fun conversations that I've had in the last work conversations that I've had in the last, I don't know, 4 months have been around CSA models and like talking through farms that are considering switching from one CSA model to another and like pros and cons. And it has been like a really fun journey. I hate that word. It's been a really fun ride, I guess. And so we had talked about doing a webinar kind of about that because I think this is a little bit in the weeds for folks who are, could be a little bit in the weeds for folks who are really experienced with CSA, and this could be a great primer for someone who doesn't have a ton of CSA experience about different kinds of models. So Danny, will you click us forward? We'll do some quick introductions, and then this is just like a loose agenda. We'll talk about generally how CSA works, and then we'll spend a bunch of time on sort of sales strategies, a couple of specific sales strategies, and then go through distribution, site, and production strategies as well. Remain on mute unless you want to ask a question, because we're really tiny, so you can come off mute and just ask. You're also welcome to use the chat function, especially if you don't want to have your voice on the recording. And if you want to use the closed captioning, it's available. And we are already recording this because we try to put them on YouTube so that other people who don't attend this can see it later. So for any of you who don't know us, I think probably most of you do, Farm Generations Co-op is a multi-stakeholder agricultural cooperative that empowers local farmers with technology, farmers who are selling locally with technology. And our main product is GrownBy. So GrownBy Wholesale, GrownBy Retail, and now Register. So that's us. So just we'll do quick introductions, but I'll say that I'm Kara. I work for Farm Generations, and I have a lot of experience with CSA as a customer, lots of experience as a farmer, and working for other sort of mid-scale CSA farms, and like experience starting CSAs and housing projects in the late or whatever, a long time ago. And sort of I've had lots of various experiences. So it's one of the parts of my role at GrownBy that I love so much is talking about CSA and working with CSA farmers. Danny and Robin, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Danny. I have been farming for, since I guess it's been 12 years, 13 years now, and I have a sheep farm in central Vermont. And as far as GrownBy is concerned, I am the customer support specialist, so I answer many of the support questions that come in. I also have a background in CSA, worked for a number of different kinds of CSAs, ran my own tiny little CSA for one season with a couple of draft horses, and yeah, so just here to help and support this presentation today.
Robin,
hey everybody. Yeah, I'm Robin. I farm in eastern Wisconsin, Parkridge Organics. We have had some form of a CSA for the last 18 seasons, which seems crazy when I figured that math out. And we have changed our model over the years. So this is a great conversation to have. I do some one-on-one consulting with farmers, and this is also often a hot topic of how the model has changed and how farms are changing with it or without it. And then I do some work with GrownBy to help get farmers acquainted with how the platform works in the winter time. And
so we're going to be talking a lot today about sort of different models and how they would work for you. We did a couple of years ago a whole series about CSA, and it was specifically a little bit about CSA in New York City, which is a slight twist, fun urban twist on traditional CSA models. And we have a bunch of YouTube videos. So Tanya, if you're interested in marketing, there's one just about marketing. And there's also a guidebook, which Danny can put in the chat. Some of this is CSA in New York City specific, but I think for folks who are brand new, there might be a lot of stuff in there that could be helpful. All right, so we're going to talk today, thank you, Danny, about how your CSA could work. I think first it's helpful to kind of know what's common in your area. These things are interestingly like geographically, like there's some of these models that are more common in some geographical places. I think because one farmer will start a thing and it'll be really successful, and others kind of go off of that or learn from that person. So that's a certain interesting regionality. We'll talk a little bit about tech tools because we're GrownBy and that's our job. And because some of these are complicated, and so tech tools can be really like incredibly important in some of these models. You need to know what you need as a farmer. So what kind of tech tools you need, what kind of production expertise you need, and what kind of production capacity and planning capacity and record keeping capacity do you have, and then labor needs, because some of these have different, all CSAs are going to require labor. Some of them skew more in one direction or more in another, and what kind of labor needs you need beyond harvesting and growing as well. You also, when you're doing this, want to think about scale. So where do you hope to be at a certain point down the road, especially if you're kind of new, like what is your like end goal, and then set up systems that are going to help you now and still work for you down the road, not make you crazy at the scale you're aiming for. And what we will not talk about is this CSA. So this is not like an esoteric conversation about what should CSA be and like what's important in CSA. And that is a fascinating historical conversation. I could totally have it with anyone, but that's not what we're going to do today. So I'm going to call all of these things CSA, and you might find yourself asking, like, should we consider that CSA? And we're just going to table that entirely and just use the same acronym for all of these things. You can certainly write to me and tell me your thoughts about that if you feel like it, but you're probably pretty busy because it's mid-March. All right, Danny, next. Thanks. So to start on these sales strategies, traditional CSA, this is like where we'll start, right? So the basics, although some of you are super experienced in this, are that members share in the bounty and the risk of the farm. So people sign up at the beginning of the season, they commit, maybe there's a membership agreement, they commit to the season, they get a portion of that harvest on the schedule that they've committed to. Often there's a weekly option. They pick up, or if they don't pick up, like they don't get anything that week. It's just like you lose it, or you use it or you lose it, right? It's you can send your friends or your neighbors. Maybe you can claim vacation weeks for sure, but it's kind of like you have committed to your role as a customer to pick up. And the farm then creates this share every week that is pretty standard across the members. So maybe every member gets exactly the same share, or maybe sometimes there are different sizes within those, but it's a pretty standardized. And that's kind of a quick overview of a more traditional CSA. This is also like the gold standard of the relationship part, right? So the CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. This was this way of having this is and was a way of having a clear connection between the farm and the community. Everybody benefits. The farm gets money up front, knows exactly who they're growing for, and the customers are supporting it and getting good value. So there are a couple of ways within a traditional CSA that you can add flexibility, right? Some farms who have a swap box, so they might seed the swap box with some extra stuff And then customers can pick up their share and say like, oh, you know, I don't really want this salad mix this week. I'm going to swap it for some scallions or something like that. So they can have a tiny bit of flexibility in that. Farms can offer vacation weeks. That's really easy to do within GrownBy. Farms can also skip weeks in GrownBy. That makes it a little bit easy. So if you take off the 4th of July week to weed or go on vacation or something like that, you can designate that as a skip week in your schedule. And then you can also have the option for customers to maybe add on some a la carte things. Like maybe you have a regular share, but customers could still buy other things from you. There are also within traditional CSAs and these other ones that we'll talk about, sometimes other add-on shares. So maybe you are the main vegetable farmer, but you offer fruit that you get in from somewhere else or bread that you get from a local bakery. And some of the pros and cons of this for farmers, traditional CSA is in some ways, it has a very specific set of planning requirements, right? So like you have to imagine the shares you want to give to your customers over the course of the season, and then plan and plant for that share. That's a little bit easier if you have other outlets. And, you know, kind of depends on what percentage of your farm sales are in CSA, right? But for a farm that has a lot of CSA customers, if it's like a big piece of their pie, you know, you really do have to plan for what that share is going to look like and then plant for that share. It's not an easy thing to just wing and be like, we'll just grow whatever, and then we'll see what we have in a given week. I think there's a lot more planning that goes into that, but there's also a lot of efficiency. So say you are aiming to give out a CSA share that is 8 items or something. You're then harvesting those 8 items, right? Maybe you have 50 shares, you're harvesting 50 bunches of red Russian kale, and you're harvesting 50 bunches of bunching onions. And it's like, you can be quite efficient about the way that you're harvesting. You may or may not choose to box those shares. We'll talk about that a little bit later. If you don't box shares and you offer sort of market style pickups, there's also some efficiency in not having to have a packing line or a boxing line. You do have to, one of the cons or one of the challenges is like building a really good share for your customers, right? You want your customers to be happy. And so you're really balancing that as a grower. Like, how many times is too many times to give beets? Like, is this going to be effective? Like, are people going to be happy with this share? Did they get enough variety? Did they get enough interesting, novel things, but also like standard traditional stuff that they're going to like? And that is a thing I think CSA farmers think a lot about. Did I build a good enough share? And then, so those are some of the pros and cons for farmers. You feel free to put in the chat other pros and cons that you see as a traditional farmer. One of the huge ones, right, is that like you get some of your money up front. You can be a farm that requires that everybody pays the whole CSA cost of the CSA share before the season starts, and then you have all of your money before you need to start, you know, really spending and harvesting. That can be both efficient in terms of paperwork and admin work, but it also just puts money in your bank account at the time of year when you need to be buying seeds and potting soil and gasoline and diesel and all that stuff. And then for a customer, that value is passed down to some of that efficiency, and that value is passed down to the customer. So you feel as a customer, you might get a larger share than you would be able to buy with the same dollar amount at a farmer's market, for instance. You get exposure to new crops. You kind of don't have to make a lot of choice. On the flip, you also don't get any choice, except for that swap box piece. But for the most part, you're going to get the share that your farmer has built for you. So those are some of the pros and cons. Like, again, This is a huge topic. We talk about their whole books written on this. I think also this relationship piece can be really cool, right? Like a farm knows exactly these people that they're growing for. That's going to be true with any of these models. So that's a picture of some of the traditional CSA stuff. Any of you who run traditional CSAs want to shout out your favorite pro or con of a traditional CSA? Or not? All right, Danny. Next slide. And then to switch to a different model is this Spenddown CSA, or in GrownBy, we would call it a farm credit CSA. Oh, Danny, will you go back one slide? So some of the things like GrownBy is helping with in a traditional CSA, GrownBy is helping with your installment payments, your customer sign up, your vacation weeks, your farm skip weeks, any additional a la carte options, all of the invoicing, like so many things within this, right, are the things that GrownBy's built. Some of its first users were CSA farmers and are CSA farmers. So it is really built for various kinds of CSA and works very well for this traditional CSA. Okay. And Black Earth says, for the traditional CSA, their favorite part is that it gives predictability for crop planning. Lots of careful planning, but also gets rid of a lot of guesswork. That is true. Also, though, with traditional CSA, because you feel like you need to make a really good share. So you don't want to have 100 members but then only actually have 87 bunches of kale this week. And so often you grow a little extra, you grow a margin over as a CSA farmer so that you're always going to have enough of every item so that you can make sure people get a full share. And I think that we'll see how that works with some of these other models too. So then to move on to Spenddown or farm credit CSA. So the basics of this are that a customer buys credit at the beginning of the season in a specific amount. So that might be $1,000 worth of credit or $500 worth of credit. You might have a couple of different credit levels. And then they place orders each week or kind of whenever they feel like it. You can kind of encourage them to place weekly orders. This is very flexible. So then when they place their order in GrownBy, it debits out of that farm credit that they have on their account. This is from a pros and cons for the farmers and the customers. I think some of this is pretty clear, right? It's really great for the farmer gets all that money up front. It's not very easy to have a payment. You can't really have a payment plan for farm credit on GrownBy. But customers could buy farm credit a couple of times over the course of the season. So that's like the farmers can get a lot of that, the bulk of that money at the beginning of the season. From a customer perspective, there's so much flexibility in this, right? They don't have to claim a vacation week if they don't know if they're going to be on vacation. They don't need to ever get turnips if they absolutely hate turnips. They just place the order that they actually want in the size that they actually want. So that is so, from a customer perspective, it's like so flexible. The customer does need to remember to place an order. If they don't place an order, they don't get anything that week. It's just kind of like pretty cut and dry, right? If you didn't go to the grocery store, you didn't get any groceries. So that's how it works. So the responsibility is really on the customer. And on the flip of that, if the customer doesn't place any orders, the farm could have a week where they don't have as much to harvest as they might have expected. So they don't have that kind of planning that they might have, they can't kind of depend on those orders coming in the same way. This is also a bit of admin work for a farm. A farm has to keep up their inventory. They have to put in inventory every week. They have to send the emails to the customers to remind them to make the order. Also, all of their orders are going to be different. So from a perspective of harvest and box packing, it's just potentially a little less efficient. So if a farm might have 4 people who ordered thyme this week, and so then someone has to go out to the thyme patch and pick those 4 bunches of thyme. I do think that this CSA model is really nice for a farm that has like a farmer is already geared towards farmers markets or a farm store or that kind of harvesting. In crop planning for, say, a farmer's market, your goal is to have almost everything that you can possibly have almost every single week of the season, right? And so when you then have a Spenddown CSA, it's kind of the same idea, is that you would have as much variety as possible for these customers. And then some of the options that you can have within this, I mean, there's many ways you could do this, right? Everybody puts their own twist on it, but some of the options are to think about if you want that credit to roll over from one season to a next. So if the customer spends $1,000 and they don't spend all of it, what's going to happen to that credit from one season to the next? You can also have farmers' choice boxes on offer for this too. So you could just have a standard item in your GrownBy shop that's like farmer's choice, $35 box. And if the customer is like, you know what, I cannot even think about what I want to cook this week at this moment, and I'm just going to buy this box. Also, sometimes farmers give additional credit. So if you spend $50, you get an extra 20, or you spend $500, you get an extra $25 worth of farm credit. Anybody want to, Robin switching to this model this year? Do you want to say anything?
I'll jump in and say, yeah, I'll say a few things that we're jumping into this model this year, so I can't speak to how it's gonna roll out exactly. We've been doing a customized CSA share for the last 10, 12 years, quite a long time. So we made that transition, and that was hands down one of the best decisions we ever made. And I think that for our farm to stay successful and be a really resilient CSA farm, giving the customers the upper hand has been really crucial. So for us, I want them to have the best possible experience that they can have. And some of that has been sacrificing the farmer side of it. However, I've spun my way into believing that all of it is for the better. So one thing about that was just brought up is like, yes, you have to, the production of a farm where you're not exactly sure how much people are going to want to take of it can be a little bit tricky. But truly, through customized shares or like a spend down situation like this, you end up being able to be more efficient in production in a way, because if there are crops that you simply know your farm is losing money on growing, and we all know what they are, there's a certain gut instinct that tells us that green beans probably don't make money. You can grow less of them. So there's like a scarcity piece to it that I think is okay to embrace, that farms are able to do that if you're doing a customized or a spend down system where, yeah, we're going to grow some green beans, but we don't have to have enough to go around to everybody, because we lose money. But if we grow a small amount of them, that's kind of a piece that I think has been important. Also, this is super flexible for the farmer. It's one of the driving reasons that we're doing it this year, is that there's no commitment every week that someone has signed up for. And I think there's a farmer flexibility side to it, where if there's a week where something, who knows, personal comes up, the weather is horrid, it's 110 index or something, and you just want to say, you know what, we're just not going to have orders this week. There's no one expecting that they had to get a share that week. They can choose to not order, and we can choose to not offer ordering. And I think that's kind of really empowering to the farm to have that, because life happens. And I experienced that last season. My mom passed away in July. So it was like the ball just had to keep rolling, because we were just doing a regular custom CSA every week. So to be able to say, no, we're not doing it this week is really powerful. And then the hopes with that is that, like, if people do not order, if they do order and they clicked that week and made an order, they better not forget to pick it up. That's really my hope. Versus the person who just signed up for a season of shares. They start to forget. They forget. Are they really forgetting? Is it just becoming less important? Are they kind of like over the culinary inspiration part of the season? I don't know, but my hopes are that we actually get less frequent flyers of the forgetters because they actually had to make an effort to place an order that week. So we'll see how that plays out. But those are just some thoughts I had.
Excellent. Thank you. Those are great, Robin. I do, yes, also my condolences. I hadn't thought about that piece about the fact that the farm can just be like, nope, not this week. And I think that that's really interesting. One of the things that came up as we started to build, Danny, you can go to custom CSA next. As we started to build out our custom CSA feature at GrownBy, Danny and I got to have all these conversations with farmers who were really experienced in this model. And one of the things they kept saying, which kind of like made my head spin a little bit, was like how they could grow really tightly, right? So when you have, maybe you have 100 CSA shares, like I said, you have to grow a little bit extra to know that you're going to have the full 100 shares for something. When you are doing customizable or Spenddown, you don't have that stress. And so if you just have 8, you maybe only have 8 bunches of scallions left over, you can just put those 8 bunches of scallions on your GrownBy shop and customers can buy them or not. And you can actually move that small remaining amount. So it's like you don't have to have had all the things for everyone. You can just have what you actually have on your farm. And that has allowed some of these farms that have been doing custom or Spenddown for a long time to just grow on very tight margins and move the actual food that they have. And I think that that's kind of just a fascinating option. Customizable boxed CSAs. So at GrownBy, we are in our 2nd season of customizable CSA shares. The way it works on GrownBy is that customers pay for a share for the whole season, right? They sign up for a CSA share, and then each week they get an email from GrownBy that says like it's time to customize your share, and then they log on to GrownBy and GrownBy suggests a share for their week, kind of builds a share, and that's based on the customer preferences and some prioritization or deprioritization that the farmer does. The customer can either edit that suggested share or check out with that suggested share. So they have to like edit it and buy it or check out with it. And if the customer does nothing, they still get a share at the end of this customization window. This is a big topic. There's like a lot more to cover. We have other videos on our YouTube about how customizable shares work on GrownBy. We have lots of help desk articles, but that's like a quick overview in 4 bullet points about how customizable shares work. For the farmer, there are some extra options. So the farm can kind of manage what is prioritized or deprioritized. In that way, the farm can kind of help GrownBy build the best share and shares that are going to be helpful for both move the stuff the farm wants to move and keep some of the stuff that is higher value or maybe not ideal to have in the suggested shares. There is the option of rollover amount. So if the customer has a share that's worth $35, but they only spend $32, then $3 can roll over to their next week in the form of farm credit. That can be set up by the farmer or not allowed at all by the farmer. And then also share values can differ. So it's easy to have different sized shares with customizable box CSAs. You can have, a large share, a single share, all of that. But also people might pay one amount and then get a different value, either slightly higher or slightly lower, to do the customization. Similarly to the Spenddown CSA, the farm has to add inventory every week. You know, they have to know exactly how many scallions they want to have on offer, how many carrots they want to have on offer, all of those things. They have to enter that all in. One of the pros for a farmer is that they get that full spending over the course of the season, right? There's no worry that your customers aren't going to be like spending down on this model because they kind of have an allotted amount for the box each week. This can be very efficient on small space. That's true of the Spenddown version too. There is more admin work here. I don't exactly know how to quantify that. I think it kind of depends on the size of your CSA and your customers and what your customers have become used to over the years. But there's always going to be a little bit of admin work to open your share and set everything up and prioritize and deprioritize things. I don't think that's massive with GrownBy. I think it's something that on a well-run farm can take, you know, some of that can happen during your field walk, and then it's just a couple of minutes. But there are inevitably some issues where a customer has forgotten to order something, or there's just some stuff that happens. I think that's going to happen in the Spenddown model sometimes too, that somebody wants to place an order after orders have closed, or, you know, stuff like that. But I think some of that happens extra with customizable CSA. You know, I think it is a very customer friendly model. And sometimes when a farm is trying hard to be customer friendly, sometimes I think you can cultivate customers who expect a lot out of the admin of the farm. The other thing for both of these, the customizable and the Spenddown, is you're boxing shares every week, right? Every share is going to be a little bit different. You know, you're going to have some time in setting up a pack line and a harvest line and getting things out in the right order, and just a pack line, not harvest line, but getting things out in the right order in a way that is going to make them easy to pack. You're going to have label printing on both customizable and Spenddown. We have great labels, and we also now have pack weight, so that you can sort of lay out your pack line in the order that you want to pack it, sort of based on heaviness and how fragile certain things are. But that packing of shares is a labor task in a week, or maybe a number of times in a week. So those are some of the pros and cons for farmers. For customers, this is really flexible. Oh, it looks like Danny went away. I bet they'll be back in a second. So customizable CSA boxes are really flexible for the customer, right? Just like Spenddown, they are able to get exactly what they want. They might want multiples of certain things, and they might want, you know, never want certain things. Some of that can happen on the algorithm through GrownBy, so they can tell GrownBy what their family preferences are. But here, I can start sharing my screen. But they also can really make that share exactly what they want through the course of the week.
That's right.
So from a customer perspective, this is really nice because it's very flexible. Also, the customer doesn't need to remember to place an order, right? GrownBy is going to place an order for them unless they've claimed a vacation week. GrownBy is going to place an order for them at the end of the customization time, no matter what. And that order could be based on their own preferences if they've entered those. So they might still be getting an order that's very similar to what they want, taking all of those desires into account. So this model is a little bit more complicated than the other two, but has some real upsides. Also, GrownBy does the emailing, so that GrownBy emails the customer. GrownBy helps make the discount codes. All of that stuff is very automated within GrownBy, and it has been, I think, for the farms that have been doing customized CSA for a long time, and I think it really works for them. They've kind of made this model really I think, smooth and customer friendly and exciting for the customers and for them. Robin, is there anything you want to say about your experience with customized box CSAs on GrownBy or otherwise?
No, I do agree with all of this. I think it really is a great model. One of the key pieces that stands apart is that thought that it's customized, but if they forget to order, there's still something coming. It's like my biggest fear is that I'm switching from this, and we do use GrownBy. I'm switching from this to just a buy down. So if they forget to order, there may be some confusion. But no, I think it handles it great. I do truly, again, I talked myself into all this, but I have data to back it up, is that packing out individual orders I think sometimes those are the biggest things farms get scared about, is the labor that's going to be involved and the time to pack customized shares. It's actually not that much different. It's just a different, and I don't know if GrownBy has any documents out there. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know back in the day I did one with that other place I used to have, where we actually did a video like showing how we set up our pack line. So it is often a switcheroo of how farms go from a traditional CSA model to a customized share. But from a time standpoint, it's not going to take up much more time. There's a margin of error though, like you have to make sure that you're not forgetting, because people, when they customize that box, they have a big plan for that broccoli that they have in their box, and you forget to put that broccoli in the box. There are ways to remedy it with like giving them a credit that they can use later, but more they're upset that there's no broccoli in their box and some big recipe. And so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is like accuracy becomes really important. But again, there's really great ways to have checks and balances. So yeah, I think everything you said is great. Customizable is so customer forward. People absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I have been a CSA member lots of places, and that in the role of now being also a parent to 2 small children, the way that we eat has really sort of sadly, it's a lot more broccoli. It's just sort of sadly changed. And I feel like if there were a customized box CSA available in my vicinity, it would be the thing that would really be like very workable for my family. And also not just because people are picky eaters, but also because we have like a huge garden. And so we want early season tomatoes and late season tomatoes, but we don't, there's stuff we don't want in the middle of the year. And so I just feel like there's so many people for whom this can be helpful. It's a really great model. Not that I don't know what to do with Swiss chard, but just, I just don't want to fight about it with anyone else. All right, next. So those are the 3 models we were kind of talking through that we were really mainly suggesting. And now we're going to talk about a couple of other strategies. Danny, will you go forward? That can be part of some of these. Oh, so there's these other 2 options, other 2 kind of sales strategies that come out. One is sliding scales or tiers. So GrownBy can do this pretty well. Also, sliding scales or tiers are ways of having the same share that is at different income levels. That can be really just a way of making shares more affordable to all families while making sure the farm meets their bottom line. We can talk more about that, and there is specifically on our YouTube channel a whole presentation about that. And then rolling shares, or shares that are like subscription for the whole year. This is something that we are seeing a little bit more of in the world of CSA, right? Folks who just kind of like your Netflix subscription, you sign up and you just get charged every week or every month. And then if at some point you want to quit, you quit. GrownBy doesn't do this super well right now, and we don't have a lot of farms asking for it, but it is a thing we're kind of seeing. We do sometimes have a couple of farms that have more like a rolling share, like you have 12 weeks of eggs, you sign up now, you get 12 weeks, and then you resubscribe at the end of 12 weeks. So those are 2 other factors that can kind of come in thinking about the way that you're going to sell. And we're happy to talk to anybody more about those options offline. Next, Danny. And then there's a lot of stuff about the way that your distributions happen that are choices that you make or ways that you change over the course of your career as a CSA farmer. So the two of the main things, or these three on closer to the left. So market style, pre-boxed, or free choice. So market style works with a traditional CSA. Some farms, instead of boxing up their shares, might have a bin of Swiss chard, a bin of carrots, a bin of scallions, and then the customer can go through and pick which of those bunches of Swiss chard most appeals to them, which bunch of carrots most appeals to them. That saves on boxing, it saves on the cost of boxes as well, and it gives customers a little bit of flexibility to choose, the smaller carrots versus the bigger ones. With pre-box shares, that's going to be sort of pretty necessary for most folks doing a customizable or a Spenddown CSA. And then there's this free choice idea. This works best on an on-farm distribution. River Queen Greens does this for their farm, where you just have everything out and maybe the customer has the option to choose 8 things that are on the table. It's sort of like a customizable share, but in person. So you don't have to do any of that pre-ordering. That, again, it's really only going to work. I shouldn't say it's only going to work, but I can only sort of picture it working in an on-farm distribution. It's going to be pretty hard to do off-farm. And then weekly, biweekly, and monthly shares, that's a common way that farmers might give a little bit of flexibility. So a customer who says, oh, I can't, I don't want to pick up every week or whatever, can choose biweekly. That is easy to do in both a traditional CSA. Oh yes, free choice would work well at a farmer's market. Of course, Emily, you're right. It would. I was like, is it right of me to say that would only work on an on-farm distribution? Well, it works great at a farmer's market. Those different schedules, the different distribution schedules, can also be integrated very easily into the customizable box options. So then a customer who's biweekly, how have you done so let me just finish my thought. That a customer who is biweekly only gets their email to customize on the weeks that they actually have a share. Robin, how have you seen custom CSA at a pre-box, like not be pre-boxed?
Yeah, so we did do it back with Harvey when we were using that platform. We basically, when they showed up, we had pre-printed out what their box contents were, which would have been the same list that we would have used to pack their box. And then we just asked them to go down the line and take the items that were on their list.
And did that work pretty well?
It worked fairly well. There were people that would, and it was about 100 people at the farm. So it was enough people to have air. And somebody might be like, try to be sneaky and say, oh, I didn't really want the carrots. I really wanted the celery, and then take the thing. But for the most part, people took what they were entitled to get. And it did then also give them that choice of, on our end, we could put out multiple size cabbages. And sure enough, someone would want the little cabbage and someone would take the big cabbage. Whereas when we're packing it for them, we're just like, everyone's getting a giant cabbage, right? Because we're wanting to make sure every box has the same, everyone who ordered cabbage is getting that fair value cabbage. But and we're talking about doing it for our buy down this year at the farm, going back to this idea that here's your order. Feel free to put your own order together, or we can do it for you in the moment. But there is then some ability for them to choose size within things, or ripeness. That's another thing. Some people really like their tomatoes to be a little underripe. Some people want them to be ripe. So it's possible. You're just putting that work onto the customer at the site that they're picking up.
Yeah, I think also that saves on boxes, right? Boxes are
they bring their own bag. Yep, it's always
they bring
nice.
their own bag, and from an environmental perspective, I think is really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Emily, thank you for piping up about that. That free choice distribution, I think the Spenddown and the Customizable can work very well at especially the Spenddown version can work really well at a farmer's market. I think with Customizable, a farmer's market pickup, you would want to be sure that you didn't sell out of something that a customizable share person had purchased. So, and then some other distribution strategies are that people have multiple sized shares, right? You might offer a large share and a small share, a family share and a single share, however you want to market that. We see at GrownBy, we also see sometimes people have like 4 different size shares. That sometimes I think like, are you just, in adding flexibility for your customers, are you making your own life really challenging? But people have chosen to do that. And then there's also an option, which is maybe a distribution strategy or maybe a whole different kind of CSA that is like a flexible week model. We have at least one farm who offers this, where they just have like a farmer's choice box, and then the customer can order it for any of the weeks through the course of the year that they want to receive it. That works really well on GrownBy. I don't think that's a very widely used model, but can be really cool. Could be really cool. And I think we can go to the next slide, Danny. And I should move really quickly through these next ones. For site strategies, we see lots of farms offer some level of on-farm pickup, which is excellent. That if you could do your whole farm, if you could do your whole distribution only on farm, that would be amazing, right? You wouldn't have to drive anywhere and you would save on fuel and all of that. Customers you could have pick your own field. Customers have a lot of connection to the farm that way. With lots of folks, they're located in a rural spot and maybe they don't have the option to have everybody come to the farm. And also some folks are like a little less excited to have all of their customers on their farm, which also might be their home and can have some extra complications. We also see lots of off-farm drop-off sites. This works very well on GrownBy. That might be a gym, a brewery, a farmer's market, a nursery school, anything like that. Sometimes that workplace CSAs fit into that. So that might be like a specific relationship with a given employer. We see farms doing home delivery. I think I often encourage people to like imagine how that will scale. Offering home delivery works really well for some folks, but it is definitely added labor. And then shipping. Shipping would be weird with maybe a vegetable CSA, but we see meat CSAs that do shipping and maybe a medicinal herb CSA, that'd be a great fit. So depending on what exactly you're running, that could be a really great option to open up your CSA to folks way outside of your regular geographic range. Next, Danny. And then, this was the last one. Maybe I did something wrong there. Next. Okay, and then from a production strategy standpoint, we see farms do year-round sales and year-round growing. We also have seen sometimes with year-round growing, people take breaks in between, maybe the fall season and the winter season. They have 2 weeks off. We also, and so that is a thing to consider. Or if you just go 52 weeks of the year and folks can take vacation whenever they want. We also see farms offer winter shares. We have seen a couple of farms be winter share only. We have seen certainly lots of specialty shares, right? That you could have a beef share for sure. You could have a soap share. You could be a farm that offers medicinal herbs. There's all kinds of specialty shares that folks offer or that a farm might partner with another farm to offer. So if you are a flower farm, you could work on GrownBy to find other vegetable farms near you and kind of co-market. As far as affinity groups go, we have a number of farms on GrownBy that are growing a very specific kind of CSA. So the one that comes to mind is Choi Commons, which has is a group of farmers, Asian American farmers, marketing Asian American vegetables to mostly millennial Asian American customers. So that's like New York, more based in the New York City area. Certainly we see this also with Latinx growers that are growing specifically Latinx vegetables for sale. So that kind of affinity group can be a really nice way of standing out in a crowded marketplace and in like growing the things that are important to you and connecting with a community that is important to you. We do sometimes see full diet CSAs. I think Danny has experience in this. That is a complicated way to have a CSA, but is also like very integrated. That the goal there is to have your grain, your dairy, your meat, your veg, and your fruit kind of all coming from one farm and sold as one share. We can talk more about that offline if anybody is curious. I probably am not the expert on that, but it is like such a cool model. You also don't have to sell quite as many shares maybe to like make money off of that, but it is a big enterprise. Has to be a big enterprise. And then multi-farm partnerships. We definitely have cooperative farms. I just mentioned Choi Commons that are growing and selling on GrownBy. We see cooperative farms in lots of places. Sometimes we also see multi-farm partnerships. So Robin mentioned like green beans, like you could then be partnering with somebody who grows green beans in your area more effectively and efficiently to offer green beans to your membership without needing to harvest them all yourself. That we see that happen a lot with green beans, with potatoes, with sweet corn. Those are all things that sometimes are purchased in or are part of a bit of a partnership. And then we sometimes just see farms where a couple of farms work together to collectively offer the CSA. I think that offers a little bit of stability and maybe takes some of the weight of growing off of everybody's shoulders. Next. And I think that's all of the slides that we have prepared right on time. But I bet that maybe some of you have questions or comments or want to pipe up and talk about your experience.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, hi. Okay. I'm Donnie with Indigo's Herbals and Organics, and then I'm also president of Seven Seed Sowers Co-op. And so I'm actually happy. This is like making me so happy right now because we were just discussing with our farmers, like everyone wants to do a CSA. And originally that was kind of my game plan when I got into this whole space. And then I ended up doing the cooperative, and then that took on like a whole life of its own, kind of thing. And so now I'm trying to like get myself back redirected to where I'm like, oh, wait, I have a farm and I grow things. But also in doing that, also bringing the others along. So I love the fact that you have like the features that allow like the multi-farms to kind of work together to create a CSA. Now, is that for the fact that we are like a co-op, would it make more sense for, I guess, the cooperative to like sign up and, set everything up under the cooperative? Or should it be the case where I present all of this to like each individual farmer, and then they should have each one of their own farms set up, and then we figure out how to come together collectively and do it online? Is that, I don't know.
Danny, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is that it depends, which is maybe a not
Everyone's
very
favorite
helpful,
answer.
yeah, not helpful place to start. But I think the primary thing that we see with multi-farm groups that are trying to run something on GrownBy is a question of how do you want your accounting to work? Because GrownBy's accounting system is doesn't automate any kind of payouts to multiple farms from a single buyer account. So that, Donnie, makes me think that maybe setting up the co-op as the entity that's using GrownBy would be the way to go, and then you all will handle how the food gets into the co-op and out of the co-op, and how the money gets into the co-op and out of the co-op, kind of outside of GrownBy with additional tools. But I mean, we're really happy to have like a longer conversation with you about that, and just talk through all of the. I'm sure that there are many details, many logistics, different entities that need different things. So we're happy to have a longer call with you to talk that through.
Okay, no, perfect. And what I'll do, we're actually trying to schedule like another planning meeting with our farmers like within the next like week or so. So after I do that, then I can kind of figure out what would be a good day, and maybe I can just have like all of us pop on a call with you, so you know what I mean, together. And then that way I'm not trying to be you know how things get lost in translation. You can't remember everything. So maybe it'll work better that way.
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
We look forward to
Yeah, no
talking.
problem. And I'll provide you with a link to sign up to talk to one of us also.
Thank you.
Putting that in the
Meanwhile,
chat now.
I'll
And I also
answer.
want to address. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Kara.
Can I answer Emily's question? Okay, so in the customizable CSA, it is based on a dollar value. So you're setting a value for each share. And if you have different size shares, you're setting a value, for multiple shares. And then the customer has a discount code that's like automatically applied that reduces their cart to by the amount that the share is worth, right? So if you have a $30 share, they bought a $30 share, they log in and they buy different stuff, and it is equal to $30, or maybe it's equal to $35, and they pay a little extra with farm credit or a credit card. So yeah, it is based on dollar value. And that's a little bit of a shift, I think, for folks coming to Customizable or to Spenddown from a traditional model. It's like a little bit hard. First of all, you might not have had to price all of your individual items, but also it's just a shift in thinking about how you build a share and how customers think about the vegetables that they get. We do have a couple, or at least one farm on GrownBy that just prices all of their customizable products at the same dollar amount. But I don't love that option. I mean, it's working for them and they like it, but I think it sometimes that seeing a dollar amount influences the choices a customer might make in the share that they choose for themselves in a given week. So I think it's just a little bit of a shift, and we're happy to dig in more with you about that.
There are other questions, things that folks want to discuss while we're here. Watching the time, we're about 5 minutes past the hour, so we'll probably wrap up pretty soon if there aren't any other questions. I want to put into the chat.
Go for it.
We're having a meet webinar upcoming. I don't know if you have that in the last couple of slides, Kara, but we're having a meat and cheese webinar upcoming. So I'm going to put the Eventbrite link to register for that in the chat now. And yeah, Kara, what were you going to say?
I was going to say we also have office hours now, once a week, I think, or sometimes on a Tuesday. We can put the link in there also for that, and that could be a fun place to kind of hash through this conversation and kind of brainstorm with us about how to make a specific model work on GrownBy. Black Earth asked Robin a question directly in the chat. Robin, are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. Question about, how our crop planning looks different from the customizable versus the traditional. It's actually, so it did take a few years of doing customizable to be able to, well, I should actually say, I think it took one season to see the changes that were potential. So our crop planning now is that we do focus on growing more of the popular things. And you could either choose to grow less or none of the things that sadly, them, they're not that popular. So we can go back to like Kara's chard example. Chard and kale, for that matter, it's losing its popularity. They're really easy to grow. So I think in the traditional model, farms are like, cool, just grow a bunch of kale. And then we thought, well, the customer will like it, so we're just going to give it to the customer. But they get kaled out, they get charted out, like it's just the facts. So we've been able to produce less of crops that we know are less popular, and then be more efficient and grow more of the crops that we know they want. So yeah, unfortunately, some of the crops people do not want were also really easy to grow. So that's like a tricky part, but I think overall we're more efficient. So our crop plan has developed over years. You sort of you have to roll with a first season of not exactly knowing what your customer base is going to want more of or less of. But what I keep reminding farms that are thinking about customized is that you still have complete control of what you're offering them. I think that's important to remember. So you are still dictating what they're having a choice from. And so you still have some control. It's not just free for all and you're suddenly going to like not have enough for everyone. You really, it's a shift of looking at things as a share value of total product for the week that you need versus as number of items going in each share. So
I'll also say that we have had some farms really have success with the customizable share in building a prioritized, like there's a place in GrownBy when you do customizable shares where you say what you're prioritizing for the week. And some folks put in the like 7 items that if they were building a share, that would be what they would prioritize. And I think that sometimes helps the algorithm build good suggested shares for people and for the farm to move that stuff. So I think that's kind of like a in between when you are moving from traditional to customized, a way of kind of bridging the gap between your, to feel like you're giving that share.
Yeah. I can answer Tanya's question if it's okay to aggregate with another CSA if your crops don't produce. Of course, that's a choice. I do think that you have to be careful that you accounted for doing that financially. So if you have a crop that you grow and you've spent the money to grow it and you've put in the labor to grow it and then it doesn't do well and then you turn around and buy in crop, that's an added expense. So it doesn't mean I've done it plenty of times, but then I also have sometimes thought, well, maybe there's enough of something else. Mm-hmm. If you have volume in a different, and maybe that means there's less variety for those customers to have a choice of, but there is value in trying to not have to buy in if you did not account for it in your budget. So that's just something I think farms can get carried away. And but that said, I've totally done it. I was bought in from another farm, but that was after my crop totally failed and I spent all the money to try to get that crop to not fail. So that's where it gets a little frustrating.
Right. I'll also mention that I think it's, Tonya, important to just be clear with your customers about what's coming from your farm and what might be coming from other producers. Different farms have different approaches to how they handle purchased in and redistributed crops, but I think, yeah, it's your customers want to know, where their food is coming from. That's why they signed up for a CSA in the first place. And so just following that thread through is really important.
I would just like to say thank you for this session. It was amazing. I learned a lot. Just listen. I know I'm going to need some help. That's first and foremost. And I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all your help. It's great.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
You're welcome.